Paul Leonard-Morgan, congratulations on receiving your very first Emmy nomination for your work on Limitless. You're no stranger to awards. You've got a couple of BAFTA TV nominations, but how did it feel being an Emmy nominee for the first time?
Surreal. Fantastic. It still hasn't really sunk in. Haven't really had time to kind of think about it, but it's, yeah, I mean, I got the call and just, I've forgotten all about the fact that the Emmys and everything else, because you don't really think about it. You just get on with your work and your scoring. And yeah, and got a call. Oh, Limitless. Oh, fantastic. No way. You're joking. Oh my God. And all jokes aside, yeah, I was chatting away to a producer the other day who's up for about 12 Emmy nominations. And he was saying the same thing as far as you've always kind of hoped that you never really know. And I was like, but you might hope, and I think it's pretty obvious that you're going to get 12. But I mean, from a composer's point of view, genuinely, you score away and you hope that people like it and you hope that you're doing the right thing. But more importantly, you're just kind of going with your instincts and hoping that you're trying to do something a little bit different. And if it works and people like it, then great. And if it doesn't, onwards.
Well, congratulations once again. Let's talk a little bit about your work on the show. It's based on the movie from 2011 with Bradley Cooper, and you were the composer on that film. So making the leap from movie to TV show, what was that transition like for this?
Completely different. The film I'd had to score pretty quickly anyway. I scored the whole thing in about 3 weeks.
Wow.
But from a TV point of view, I remember going in and chatting away to Mark Webb, the director, and to Craig Sweeney, the showrunner. And we were just talking about it and what they wanted to achieve and what I wanted to achieve. And we were all in agreement that it shouldn't just be a rehash of the film. If anything, it should be completely different. And I was like, well, look, we can still keep elements of it. I really like the pace of the film soundtrack, but I think from a TV point of view, every single week it's a CBS procedural, but it's not a CBS procedural because they wanted to make it, again, completely different. So every single episode was its own little baby. So 1 minute you're doing lo-fi 8-bit kind of electronic music, the next minute you're doing full-on electronic, typical kind of loads of drums and loads of orchestral stuff. The next minute you're doing band tracks. So I think for me the challenge was, right, let's create a sound that's instantly identifiable as the series, but at the same time, let's do something different. And I think that for me was what it was. The lead character, Brian, with Jake McDormand, but Brian in the program, I think what was helpful from the starting point was he played in the band and he wasn't very good, perfect with my guitar skills, but he wasn't very good. But he had been in this indie band and he had this kind of indie vibe going on about him. So I think that by itself was quite helpful as far as giving a direction of what soundtrack. It should be full of energy. We're going to have lots of twists and turns when he pops his pills and he suddenly gets high on his NZT. But at the same time, it was always going to be a very current score.
Mm-hmm. Right. So let's talk about the pilot, which is what you're nominated for. A lot of information is conveyed just in like the first 10 minutes of that pilot. And a lot of information is conveyed throughout all 45 minutes. So as a composer, how do you help facilitate that?
Trying to keep them in the right place at the right time. I mean, helping the energy of it. I mean, again, Mark and I and Craig, we just kind of said, right, let's start off from the get-go. Let's just grab people in it, grab them by the balls, and let's go for 2 minutes and have a really fun chase sequence. And then we kind of go back in time. He's in front of that subway train. It's coming in, it's coming, it's coming in. Okay, let me introduce myself. Hi. And then you kind of twist it all around, and then we're on a kind of montage. And I remember Mark, when he did 500 Days of Summer, I've said before, it is one of my favorite films. And it had certain elements of that as far as montages and as far as the use of kind of really good licensed tracks. And I remember kind of going on from that. And then he said, okay, but now we're going to go from that track to your next bit of score, which is actually a bit of emotional pathos when he's in with his dad and the family. And then we're going back into this. And now we're going into his song, which you've got to write for us as well. You're writing a song for him and his band. And then you're going back in score. So it's incredibly schizophrenic. And I think from a composer's point of view, it's trying to keep the momentum going. But again, keeping it quite grounded so that people are following the story without overpowering them too much.
Mm-hmm. Right, absolutely. So take us through what a typical week on a television show is like for you.
Coffee. Coffee. So you go in.
You need your own pill too, like he has in the movie.
It's allowed. We go and spot on the Monday morning, a typical week, and again, it'll vary from week to week. But spot on the Monday morning, they still haven't locked the episode yet, so I'll be in a room down in Culver City, which is just down the road. It's me, there's Liza, the music supervisor, there's Chris, who's the music editor, you've got Craig, the showrunner, you've got the writer of the week, you've got Jeff, the producer, and you've got the editor. So there's maybe 7 or 8 people in that room. And again, so you spot it, which is where you're going through the director, working out obviously where the music's coming in. You have a chat about it, what's working, what's not, how I think I can bring something to it that maybe they haven't thought of before, different viewpoint. Then I'll drive back here, finish off the previous week's episode while they're locking that episode, and then they will send that episode overnight on the Monday. I'm in with my assistants first thing on Tuesday morning. Away you go. You work through the night on Tuesday night, no sleep. You work through on Wednesday. You finish it about 8 p.m., 9 p.m. You then send it off, go home, get some sleep. Thursday morning, and we come to some notes from the producers and directors, although there weren't that many on this series. And then, yeah, do those notes off on the Friday. You're kind of mixing over the weekend. Then again, Monday morning, go and spot again. Monday afternoon, your mixes finishing off and then get delivered. Then Tuesday morning starts all over again. And then, yeah, about 8 months later, you collapse and see the light of day a bit.
So in those instances where you get stuck on something, let's say, how do you push past that? And obviously you have.
There is no time to get stuck. Mm-hmm. No, I mean, all jokes aside, I think for me, what I like to do as a composer, and again, different composers have their own styles. For me, I like composing the first pass entirely, which means you go from start to finish and you just get into it, and you get into it because I'm the same on any project. It doesn't matter whether it's a feature film or television or a game or whatever. Is by the end of it, you are so in the flow and you are so tired, the wrong phrase, because you're going on adrenaline and you're going on this buzz, but you're suddenly in the zone and all these ideas have come together and I have no idea where they come from. But so if you get to a tricky cue, if you get to one that's just not quite clicking, you just write something for it. It almost doesn't matter what, because it's about trying to get into that vibe and that zone. And then by the end of it, right, I've created the sound, I've created the motifs for the week, the tune for the week, whatever. Because again, for me, I don't really like reusing that much thematic material on TV stuff. The film is different, and yes, it's good to have big themes and big motifs, but it's nice to do something fresh. So having got to the end, you'll then go back to the beginning and then start massaging a bit after a little bit of, say, Wednesday evening sleep. You then go back, going, right, that sound there would be good for there. Now I'm into that, or reorchestrate that. Now I know what I'm doing for that cue. Get rid of the cue that wasn't working, start again, because it's just trying to get your mind into that zone. I wish there was an easy way to do it.
Right, yeah. You've worked a lot in both film and TV, and the lines are blurring quite a bit. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, this is the first American television thing that I've ever done. I've done UK TV before. I moved to the States a couple of years ago. So it was, I wouldn't say a leap of faith for the producers, but there's me and I'm going, well, I know how to do film, never done TV before, I'll give it a go. And they were, I can't emphasize enough, they were so supportive, because every time I thought I was going too far, they were going, look, just trust your instincts, just follow your instincts, we absolutely adore it. And if you are going too far, don't worry, we'll pull you back. And it only happened, I can think of maybe 3 occasions when it just went a little bit too wacky. But so I think good music is good music. Good drama is good drama, and it doesn't matter whether it's film or TV. And you look at HBO, you look at Netflix, you look at Amazon, you say the lines are blurred. I mean, there are almost no lines. It doesn't matter who the actors are, who the composers are, who the DOPs are, the cinematographers. Everybody is just, again, looking at Mark and looking at Neil Berger, all these directors that are just doing this good stuff. It's just fantastic. I think if I always try and treat it as me as a punter. If I've paid for a ticket to go and watch a film, or I paid for HBO, or I'm sitting down watching CBS or whatever, I just want to be entertained, and I want to be taken on a ride for 90 minutes, 2 hours on a film, or 45 minutes on TV, or however long. I just want to get into something, and I want to be transported away from reality. And it doesn't matter, as I say, whether it's TV or film. I just want to sit there and enjoy it. And I think from a composer's point of view, that's such a liberating and refreshing thing, these times that we're in at the moment, because you're not just pigeonholed as I must do TV, I must do big sting towards the end of the episode, or I must do this. You can really go for it and try some different stuff, and it's fun.
Mm-hmm. So what were some themes from Limitless, particularly in the pilot, that you felt were really exemplary of that, of trying something different, of trying something new?
I remember when there was it was about 15 or 20 minutes in, and there's a moment where Brian's running away from the subway on the repeat, and suddenly he splits into about 4 or 5 different directions, and he's running away, and he's going, now I could take route A, and then it pauses there. He stays on the shots, and he goes, oh, I could take route B, and I could take route C. And then it suddenly goes back into real time again. And he's got his narrative over the top and his voiceover. And I learned ages later, Chris, one of the editors, is one of the things that he'd done in Pirates of the Caribbean. He'd used the kind of same technique with, I think it was Jasper. But again, that became a visual style. Musically, I said to Mark, well, it's kind of a superhero, but it's not a superhero. It's very definitely not a Marvel series.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he has these abilities when he's high on NCT, and he didn't really know what NCT was about because it was the pilot, but they're trying to introduce this. So I put on this bombastic kind of horn superhero-y kind of thing, but at the same time keeping the electronica bubbling below it and the fast drums. And he loved it. And then they recut it. I was like, I don't know if this works anymore for recut. And everything I did was like, no, go back to superhero, go back to superhero. And it was just that one moment. And in actual fact, I never revisited chordally that kind of structure till about episode 11 or 12 or 13, when he started again to be developing those skills a little bit more. And I think that was just one of the things where it was this crossover, because you're not just doing, it starts off with full-on orchestral and big drums, quite traditional almost. Then you're starting to introduce electronica, and it was only at that moment where it was a crossover almost, you know, 3 or 4 different styles.
Mm-hmm. What's extraordinary too about it is there's this emotion underneath it as well, because he's dealing with his father being sick, and you know, it's very kind of heavy material for this genre kind of show. Can you talk about highlighting that emotion underneath while still staying true to the genre of it?
Yeah, you've totally picked up on it, and that again for me was something really nice. You've got this emotion where it was almost an indie film emotion. You've got the dad at the end of the pilot where he's lying in bed and Brian's going off to him, and then from that he's up on the rooftop with Jennifer, and it was, again, go back to the blurring of the lines, it felt like a film to me. You've got this real emotional, this pathos that you're doing with them, and really empathize with the characters, and I don't get that in a lot of TV procedurals. So again, for me, it was just a case of, right, I'm just going to score this like a film, and if it's not feeling correct, then obviously pull me back. But I think that was almost the challenge as composer, certainly for the first 7 or 8 episodes when the series is finding its feet and trying to work out where it's going. It was, you had this, what I would call the story of the week stuff, but you then got the arc, the series arc, and with that, that's where you're trying to bring in the emotion and the themes. And there was a theme for the dad, which then got brought back and expanded and so on every time Brian was with his family and his dad. And the first time we hear that theme is when he's at the end of the pilot, when the dad's in the hospital, and it just felt really nice. And he just kept on coming back to that and expanding it and doing variations of that theme every time he came to the family.
Mm-hmm. I think that arc within the season, this goes for every show, I think that's really where the extraordinary thing about TV, where TV has been going in the last few decades, you know, being able to tell that kind of continuous storyline. It must be really great as a composer to be able to compose for multiple hours, you know, this long arc.
The first TV thing I did was a thing called Spooks in the UK, called MI5 over here. And I remember being so frustrated because I'd be seeing the series arc and I'd be phoning up the producer going, "What's happening? This is great. We're getting to the arc." She's like, "We haven't written it yet." "What do you mean you haven't written it? I need to know what's happening." And for me, that's great TV, is at the end of it, you're watching that, forget about whether you worked on it or not. It's the same with Lost. You know, you really want to find out what's going on. I remember on about series 4 of Lost thinking, do they know where this is going or not? I really hope they do, because I really want to know what's going on here. And I think, again, as a composer, what the fun part of it is you're definitely not writing roughshod over the story of the week stuff, but the arc, the series, the stuff where you're going, and again, the last 4 episodes for me of the series just hit it out of the park. There was emotion, there was pace. I know this is specifically for the pilot, but what was fantastic is, again, you do have those, and you're looking back to where that story started, and a lot of the time you forget it because you've got to the end of series 1 or series 2 or series 3 or however many series, and you go, oh yeah, it was all about him with the pill and his dad and how those stories have developed. And I think, yeah, it just takes you on for the ride. So from a composer's point of view, it's great because it means that you can start in the same way that musically you would give every cue an arc, you're starting to give every episode an arc. There's space, there's passion, there's energy, there's all these different themes. You're trying to interconnect them as a composer.
Mm-hmm. Well, congratulations once again, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. It was a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure.
Have a great day.
And you, Zach. Take care, man.
You too. Thanks.